Hello! Welcome to another episode of Your Next 50. Ladies, we are here, Sylvia and I, to tell you that it's your time. Be intentional with your choices and don't waste even one more day hiding in your stories. You can reclaim your personal power and be happy while doing it, and this podcast will show you how. Another episode, Sylvia. How did we get here?
I know, it's so exciting. And we're talking about the brain today.
Oh.
The brain, our brains. And I was thinking of that,
Mhm.
when we're young, and I was trying to think with my own kids and when I was little, we're
Mhm.
always complimented on how smart we
Smart.
are. Right? How smart you are. You are
Smart.
so smart, Sylvia. You'll be a success in anything you do.
Yeah.
And so I think we are raised that way to think that intelligence, put intelligence really high up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And today we might just maybe knock it down a few
Yeah.
notches. What do you think?
I love that intro. And
Mm,
I think we praise book smarts so much in our
mm,
world. And what we want to talk about today is your brains will only get you so far. And it's sort of through our work with entrepreneurs for Sylvia and executives with myself, that sort of self-imposed ceiling. Ooh, I like that. When
mm,
you only leverage your brain. So we're not about not being smart, let's be clear. But we're about how can we come to our roles and our humanity as a whole, not just with our brains. I will share, Sylvia, we always like to start with personal stories. I was very disconnected from my physical self for a long time. So I used
mm,
to say that there was this line under my chin where my brain drove my behavior and my body really suffered. It was an afterthought.
mm.
And as you get
Wow.
older, you all know that your body eventually starts to tell you things, whether you want to hear it or not,
And
right?
your brain does too. If you caught our show about menopause and perimenopause, the brain fog, Jenny, the brain fog. I always could,
Yeah,
rely on my brain to put the
yeah.
words in my mouth. And one of the symptoms of perimenopause is that brain fog. So I've
Mhm.
been leaning into that. So sometimes I love that though. Connecting. We are not just our brains.
Oh,
We are not just our bodies.
mhm,
It is on the physical plane, the mental plane, and the spiritual plane. But I don't think we're serving our future
mhm,
generations well by only, focusing on one aspect or
mhm,
two aspects. And I think when they're small, they can really tap in to all.
mm,
They understand.
mm,
Children really, really understand. And this is a class for adults, but a podcast episode for adults, but we all have kids. And
mhm,
how, as we're looking to the future, I think they're not just pretty, you're not just smart, but you're
mhm,
also,
mhm,
we talk about emotional intelligence,
mhm,
and
mhm.
not everyone's tapped into that just yet. Mm.
So I want to pose a question to our community because it came up. As a parent, would you rather have a kid that was a Harvard graduate
Oh.
or a really emotionally grounded person?
Oh, Jenny, I think that's you're probably
Says a
people are
lot,
like
right?
feeling the noose around the neck trying to yeah, think of all the cultures where, you want a
Yeah,
doctor, a
yeah,
lawyer, an engineer in your family.
yeah,
There are still a lot of families
yeah.
that think that way. I was very blessed to have parents, an artist father
Yeah,
and a mom who just, said, "You're smart, you'll be a success at anything." And
yeah,
I went into music, and I was allowed, not allowed, but
yeah,
encouraged.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
encouraged to follow my passions.
yeah,
But that's true.
yeah.
Harvard, but not everybody at Harvard is smart, right? We put all these people up on pedestals. It's like doctors. We put
Hmm.
them on pedestals, and then you realize they are human.
Well, and remember there's different kinds of smarts. So in my house there are at least two dyslexics, which
Mm,
if I've done a fair bit of research on dyslexics, which are about their brains work differently, right? Not
right.
better or worse, just differently. And for example, Andrew Carnegie was one of the most famous dyslexics. There
Mm,
are records of these kinds of people that have other skills rather than the ability to read books really fast.
mm,
So that's just one example of how they figured out how their brains could only get them so far, and they found ways to compensate. Just a
Mm.
fun story for, I hope my kids don't mind me telling this story. One of my kids, when they were learning how to read, they were really good at faking it. So she would open the book, right? This is about grade 2, grade 1. And you'd see her eyes scan the whole thing, the whole
Yeah.
page. And then she'd kind of come up with some kind of a text that sort of looked like what the text was, right? So she'd substitute horse for donkey, or so it was close
Mm.
enough. But that's a great example of how her brain was busy chugging, finding different synonyms, stretching itself to accomplish a goal that, for folks that have natural neuron pathways for reading, is relatively straightforward. So
Mhm.
I'm excited to dive into this whole brains only get you so far. So I've told my story sort of about my experience of
Mm.
disassociating from my body. What stories come up for you, Sylvia, about
Well,
this?
I was thinking of this in terms of brain, which is very, masculine,
Smart. Yeah.
the smarts, and then moving into feeling. And where in my life has that shown up? Where have I, we all have been taught the pros and cons list, right? Make a list of pros and cons. So when I was, trying to figure out to do my master's in conducting, choir conducting, or management, I made my list of pros and cons. And the pros really were outweighed the cons when I started thinking about my MBA. So I
Mm,
really based that choice on the brain, thinking
mm,
through that is the
yep.
right decision that will get me far in life. Was it actually something my heart was singing to do?
Mm,
No, that was on the conducting side, but I put that side away.
mm,
Now, I don't regret anything as I've moved forward, and I think everywhere we are where we are, and
mm,
that's totally fine. Now, I would, if I were to go and talk to Sylvia back then, I would have a different conversation with
mm,
her.
mm,
When I delved into my feelings, when decision making came up, my doula, when I started my doula practice, that was 100% feeling, this
mhm,
intuitive hit to my body where I was like,
mhm.
yes, that is what
Yeah,
I'm going to do. And,
yeah.
the questions, is it going to be the right thing? You don't have business, you're not an entrepreneur. You don't have training in that. You don't have this, you don't have all of that came up. But I was like, you know what though? This feels so right.
Right. Right.
And what a different way to
Mm,
manage life.
mm,
And I'm not saying we have to ditch the brain and the pros and cons lists
mm,
and the thinking through things, because I think it's very relevant. However, I think we need to find that balance of where does that all fit in?
mm,
And the feeling part, we've talked about this on many shows, feeling and how we repress our feelings.
mm.
So
So,
today's invitation to you
yep.
is where can we delve into the feelings
Mm.
along with the thinking?
The whispers, right?
The whispers of your heart. Yes,
The
definitely.
whispers. The One of the things that I see a lot of. So, actually, I'm going to go back. What it reminds me of is how we're all in a process of unlearning. In other
Mm,
words, we probably had all these gifts when we were born. We all had them. We all
yeah.
naturally flipped from A to B, like from thinking to feeling, and it was completely integrated, right?
Well,
Excuse
yeah,
me.
babies don't, they're not thinking. They're just
Yeah,
reacting
yeah,
through feeling. They're cold, they'll cry. They're hungry, they'll cry. I mean,
yeah.
they're not rationalizing. Is this a pro or con? If I
Sure.
eat right now, is it, no. So where does that come in? That is society.
Yeah.
That is when we start to go to school. It's even in date, it's very early on
It
in our
has
lives.
it, yes, it's very early on, and it's to cope in a society which is based on, we
Mm,
are social beings. We need to be in society. And I can remember being about watching a group of grade 6 to grade 8 piano players, and I was performing on a recital, and with them, I was the older piano player. And in the backstage, what was so funny was they were all joking around and goofing around, and they were like regular grade 6, 7 kids. And when the minute they walked on stage, it was like they were taken over by a different personality.
mm,
And this weight, this seriousness, this sort of I need to conform showed up for them on stage as they
right.
performed their pieces. And so I think that that starts to get chipped away at, and we have to conform, or it's definitely socially acceptable to be smart rather than being, I don't think being artistic is necessarily appreciated as much as it could be in our society. The achievers are always coming from the other, from who has the highest grades. And women and girls are so taught to achieve through marks, right? That is such a huge status symbol to compete, right? Boys will be boys is kind of the expression. But women in particular, we know that there's more women going into medical school, into law school. And yet, this is an aside, but our Canadian paper, the Globe and Mail, just did a big expose on salaries for women doctors, especially specialists. They are making like 25% less.
Makes no sense, Jenny.
I know.
It just makes no sense in 2022.
But are we still here? Right? So this topic of your brains will only get you so far. So we've talked about the brain versus the feeling. You've talked about the masculine and the feminine. Maybe I'd add one more thing, which is, a lot of the women that I work with are in senior leadership positions. They're number twos, right? They're in second in command, or they're on a leadership team. And I think everybody realizes at some point, what got you here, to quote the famous book, what got you here won't get you there. Fantastic book by Marshall Goldsmith. And to make that next level, everybody has the brain skills. So it's no longer about
yes, at that level, right? I mean, at that level, it definitely is that. So what then propels you to becoming that number one? What are those other skills that you can practice and hone in on and bring out that make you that well-rounded leader? That magnetic leader. What it goes back to that. Why are we attracted? What makes a good leader? And I don't think it's necessarily the smartest one in the room.
Well, and it almost
not
can
when
be
you're leading humans.
To a detriment almost, right? So if you've been reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart.
So good. All about emotions, good. Jenny. I'm reading this and I'm thinking, oh, Jenny, this is Jenny's book.
I know. I'm just so excited. We'll have to do a special expose on it. But the opening talks about how she considered herself having a superpower because she could see these dynamics in her family. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for women to be able to see the political landscape at the senior leadership table, the ability to be open to working on themselves, right? To asking themselves tough questions, positioning their communications, and being significantly more strategic with their conversations and their actions. Because again, women traditionally have been praised for the tasks and the to-dos. But at some point, that only gets you so far. It's like the fantastic executive administrator who can't strategically see what the most important next move is, right? But it takes courage. I'd like to highlight that, to unpack or unlearn what got you there and to have the confidence to look at yourself from that different lens. I commend anybody who wants to do that work. It is important and it is incredibly valuable.
And it's reminding me of so many women who say, I should take another certification or another degree. And it's really, because we never think we're smart enough, but really what we're telling you is that you are smart enough. Let's hone in and bring out those skills that will make you that exceptional leader that the other people will not have recognized that they need yet, right? Those skills that they don't know that they need. And that you have, and that might be bubbling underneath. And it comes back down to, I'm having these thoughts of being our unique and authentic selves. But what I think we're hiding, Jenny, is all those skills that wouldn't, that people need to be exceptional leaders. Are we not? We're still thinking about that degree and that, if I only had this coaching and this, and I need to get this certification and I have to do this and check. But we're missing that key piece.
And that keeps us safe. Let's just own that from a behavioral thing, right? It keeps us safe. It keeps us out of the harm's way.
Because we know we can do it, right? Because we're smart.
It keeps us
I know I'm going to be able to get, if I wanted to do another master's degree, I could easily do another master's degree.
That's really interesting. And I love these conversations. I just want to take a pause and just say how much I love this work and how much I love these podcasts. Thank you. If you caught our Valerie Pisano episode, which had just dropped recently too, take a look, because when she talked about her team, I don't know if you remember this, Sylvia, but the way she spoke about her team, one of her habits is that everybody gets a chance to speak at the beginning of the workshop. And so every time they have a check-in, and it sets up the expectation that all voices are valued. valued. And I thought to myself, that is only a learned experience for someone who has not been heard at the table. If you've always expected to be heard, if you've always expected to have your voice understood, that might be something that you would skip over. So I think that women have an incredible secret sauce that they need to tap into. And you're right, they do not need another certificate to do it.
No. And it's that I think coming in, I'm talking a lot with my groups about, owning that space, coming in and showing that confidence that you do have the smarts, but you have the other, and to show the other side of things. I am a great leader. I know what my team needs. This is how we do things here. It might be different, yes, than what you've done before, but this is the new leadership. It's a new paradigm.
It is. And it gets me very excited. The idea that you see people, that you hear, like, so the brain this is the best practice for the strategic plan. This is how you write an HR strategy. This is how you, I don't know, bang molecules against each other to build some great chemical. That you can see my limitations there, Sylvia. And, but, diving into, but what are your thoughts on this? What is it about this project that makes you get you excited? Taking the time to ask those questions that people get you and that they understand your point of view builds such a richer landscape, and a richer landscape for discovery and for, innovation. Because that's certainly, Valerie's whole discussion was all about innovation in a space of collaboration. And when you hold your walls up and say, I'm the smartest person in the room, or the antidote to that is also, because I'm the smartest person in the room, I need to make sure I talk all the time, right?
To have validation. Yes.
I'm going to own that one. I'm guilty of that one, Sylvia. And I'm talking a lot on this episode. I'm mindful of that too. But when you're a fountain person, I call myself a fountain person, right? I have a million ideas a day. I don't really divide out which ones are actually good ideas. I'm the kind of person that has ideas. I need others around me to help me synthesize and to decide. And I have to own knowing myself to make space for other voices, because I know that I'm also the kind of person that can bring out the best in others, but they need space.
Yes, definitely. And I think at a certain point, I'm talking a lot as well, building teams. So what I'm hearing from you is, like, as we're building our teams, for those who are entrepreneurs or leaders in a company, are you looking at a CV and only looking at what people, their qualifications, or can you read between the lines? And I've hired a lot of people, and I can tell often within that first handshake tells so much, right? And it's cliche, right? Oh, you can tell a person by their handshake, but you really can. And that's a skill. And there's more to read between the lines than just, I've worked here, I've done this, I can do this. So I invite you all, like, let's look at those other skills, the people skills, the emotional intelligence. How do people react? Yeah, there's just another level to it all.
It reminds me of that famous quote. I usually use it in fundraising, but it applies for hiring and firing. If it looks like quicksand, if it smells like quicksand, it's probably quicksand, Sylvia, right?
Oh, and that too, you when you're hiring other people and you look at the CV, oh, on paper this looks amazing, but then when you get them in front of you, it doesn't jive. You got or when you've interviewed for a job, on paper this looks amazing, right? The pros and cons, the analytical brain. This looks great.
Good school. They went to a good school, right?
They must be. Yes, and I have a friend in one of my masterminds, and she's attending a program at Harvard, and she has access to all these people. And before she got there, she was like, "Oh my gosh, who am I to be part of these groups of these intelligent, superhuman people?" Well, now she's done this for a couple months now, and she comes back and she goes, "Yeah, they, they poop just like everybody else, right? And it's true. It's true. It's not putting people on pedestals because they have a degree somewhere. It means really not. Is that what is that going to be on your tombstone? Let's go back. In 50 years, they're not going to say, well, she went to Harvard. No, I think what comes up is, what do you want to be remembered for? She was an amazing human, amazing person in her community.
It's a little bit like, that says more about you than it does about them, the way you perceive the Harvard degree, right?
Right? Doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Doesn't it? And
It's putting, yeah, what are you valuing as a
yeah.
person?
And to be clear, like this is not a podcast that's poo-pooing education or
Oh, no,
learning.
no.
Like, I mean,
No,
you
we
and
all
I
have
are,
the degrees, Jenny. How
yeah,
many degrees
and
do we have between us?
oh gosh, we're good at that. And we also both inherently value learning. Like
Yes.
Sylvia and I challenge each other all the time. We're the first to jump in on new technology and trying new, well, maybe not the first. I'm going to say I'm the second. Sylvia prods me and then I jump in. But, we know the importance of keeping those brains active. We know
Mm,
that stuff. The message here, and maybe we move into the takeaways, is if
yeah.
you're listening to this and you're the kind of person that has been sitting as number two, you're the kind of person that can see the potential for your business, but is having trouble accessing it. We're inviting you to say, maybe it's not one more certification. Maybe it's a little bit more time in relationship with self to go back to remind yourself of the things that you are already really, really good at, and to believe in your own self-worth and your own self-worthiness for the work that you
Mm,
do. What else would you
that's
add? Do you
beautiful.
like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, the worthiness piece. And I think it goes back. We did a great episode, Jenny, about silence. And I've shared
Yeah.
my experiences going, 4 hours of silence. And
Yeah.
people have shared with us that, those 10-day Vipassana, I think that's how
Mhm.
you call it, the challenges where 10 days
Yeah.
of silence, even if you did 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, sitting in that silence to hear the whispers again. I think
Yeah.
it's coming back when we are faced. We're all faced, no matter what we do in life, with crossroads,
Yeah.
and we need to make decisions. And sometimes we will use our brains. I think that's our first go-to, is what is this? What does this look like on paper? But then we're inviting you, go the next level,
Mm.
go deeper. What is your heart calling? What feels right? Because sometimes that won't make sense on paper, but that's going to be the most amazing
Mm.
decision. I'm thinking of new love, or
Mhm.
love, at one point, all these situations in my
Yeah.
mind of my
Mm.
past, it might not
Mm.
make sense, but it feels so good, and it ends up being the best decision possible. So that's what I wrote down. Sit quietly, asking my higher self, what would
Mm.
you do in this situation?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. Tell me
I
about your altar practice. Would you mind? Would you mind sharing with folks? Because I think that's pretty powerful too.
Well, I have a lot of different rituals, and I think
Yeah.
part of my focus every day is I like cards. I like my oracle and my
Yeah.
tarot cards. I think
Yeah.
they're beautiful. It's art. It joins art. It joins spirituality, and doing a pull, asking myself a question: what do I need to hear today? What
Yeah.
guidance do I need to
Yeah.
and really, today's message for me was all about the crossroads. I mean,
Mm.
how pertinent is that,
Appropriate.
right? Aligned with purpose, crossroads, there is no wrong path.
Mm.
But I think then I was like, okay, well, the mind versus the heart. So that is one of my practices every day, just sitting.
Mm.
And it gives me time, and I can journal.
Mm.
Journaling is one part. We've talked about that
Mhm.
before. Journaling
Mhm.
and journaling from the higher self, like stream of consciousness
Yeah.
journaling.
Yeah.
There's two of my practices. I'll share more another time.
I'd love to hear more about those. Just for a funny aside, my mom was a smoker for years until her first granddaughter was born. And she used to say that her smoking time was her thinking time. And
Yeah,
I kind of get it now at my age.
yeah.
She ran a small business, and the sitting with the cigarette, because of course, as an influential, opinionated 22-year-old, I was always like, well, how could she possibly smoke, right? Nobody should be smoking. But she said it stopped the world for 3.5 minutes while she had her coffee and her cigarette. And I think it was her planning time, Sylvia, right?
Probably. Imagine
Yeah.
it's that letting go, and the mind just
Yeah.
goes where it needs to go, and
Yeah.
you get those answers, right?
Yeah.
She was sitting in silence. It just
She
means that
was.
she was inhaling smoke into her lungs, and we both know that that's not very good for you, but
Yeah, but
but I get it. Yes.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, because in a busy world, and we get praised for being busy, sitting still and thinking about things is not socially acceptable, right? So, I
And
mean,
feeling things,
yeah, and feeling things we have
right?
not learned. That's what
Sitting,
Brené
and
Brown
so
was
not
saying.
sitting and thinking, sitting, just not thinking. Let's quiet the mind so that
Yeah,
the true
yeah,
messages come forth.
yeah. And trusting your
Mm,
choices, right? Like
mm.
trusting that the decision you made is the right one, and not feeling this anxiety and this doubt. I mean, I can relate to that one, and I can tell you, boy, this is a yeah. We're there's a lot of feeling in this. I'm
Mm.
spending some time with my 91-year-old father-in-law who's in hospital right now, and at the end of your life. It's not the end of his life, just to be clear. But in a time of crisis, when family comes together, you don't talk about uh,
Degrees.
no, you don't talk about how much money's in the bank. You talk
No.
about whether you've been a good father, whether you've been a good partner, whether you've made a difference in the world enough. And the feelings are very natural because it's the time for them. And so,
Mm.
as you're listening to this, let's not wait, right? This
No.
show is about your next 50. Let's not wait another day to say the things and do the things that are on our heart. And if we don't know what they are, let's commit to slowing down enough to finding them and to
Mm.
feeling them, Sylvia.
Feeling. We're moving to feeling.
Yeah,
What
we
a
are.
beautiful, what a great, thank you so much, Jenny. This
Yeah.
this show
This one was really
was
special to me. Thank you. Yeah.
it is. You're hearing this probably at the beginning of February, but it is we're recording this, it's our first episode after the
Yeah.
holidays. So you can see we're slowly getting back in.
Yeah.
And we want this year to be different for
Yeah.
both of us. And I think to have a different outcome, we need to do things differently and be courageous, get into the discomfort as we always
Mm.
invite you to do.
Mm.
What's on the show next week, Jenny Mitchell?
Well, so we are talking about assumptions. So the
Oh,
things we might assume about other people, about ourselves, about situations, about leaders, about
and how
staff.
that holds us back, how
Yeah.
that can hold us
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
or how
Yeah.
it affects us, how
And
those assumptions.
affect us. That's right.
Yeah.
And what we might be missing out on, I think, is really
Mm.
the interesting part for me. So another great discussion, and I certainly have lots of wonderful assumptions that I've made along the way that were maybe not true. I think as fundraisers, that's a really relevant one. We assume people don't want us to ask too much. We assume a lot of things because it's safer than going out and getting clarity on it. But as I get older, it gets more and more important to me to be honest and to be transparent with the people in my life, and to gain that kind of clarity for me and for everyone
Oh,
around me.
wonderful, wonderful. As always, if you liked this episode, we'd ask you to give us a 5-star review on Apple, share it with friends who you know that need this. Thank you so much for everybody for all the
Mhm.
downloads.
Oh my gosh.
As we go forward, the downloads are there. There are more downloads every week, and we're just so ecstatic when we look at that. We're like, this is resonating with people. We're not the only one. So thank you so much. That would just mean the world to us.
And we should probably put a plug in for March 8th, International Women's Day. We will be
Yes.
hosting an evening Your Next 50 workshop.
Yes.
After popular demand, we will be doing it, I think it's 6:30 Eastern. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. And so we'll be here Eastern, 6:30 p.m., which means that our folks on the West Coast and the East Coast can join us. Lots of fantastic stuff. And just to be clear, every workshop is curated and new with new
It's different.
content. So
It's so different.
if you've attended in the past, please do consider coming again, because everyone is different. And of course, what makes it especially different is the people like you who listen in and who join us and make that
Mm.
special chemistry work. So plan on spending International Women's Day with us. Oh, it just happens also, I'm just going to say, to be my birthday. So
Yes, and I'm so lucky to spend your birthday with you. That's just so fun. Also, if you want to reach out to Jenny, she's got a lot of things going on.
I
She's got
do.
her Uplift program, her one-on-one coaching, and her Chavender Club for the fun. I think it's for fundraising.
Yep,
Fun,
and
yes.
it is, and I have a lot of senior level executive folks in there, but I've also have some other programs I'm kicking off. So
Mm,
yeah, please do reach out. It's Jenny@chavender.com.
Chavender.com.
And what about
And
you?
I've got the So Confident community. The ladies are just amazing. And we meet every week. We have interesting discussions
Mhm.
all about bringing us out of our comfort zones and
Mhm.
really delving into confidence.
Mhm.
And it's just lovely to create that. It really is a community.
Unity.
The women are just like, oh my God, when are we starting up again? And I'm like, isn't that amazing? And we
That
have
is.
book club in there too. We're reading a book every month and talking about it and really sharing and delving into
Mhm.
creating deep relationships. And I just love that. So that we're doors are opening this month. So please come to the website. I also do one-on-one coaching, empowerment coaching, business coaching. That is what we're all about. Thank you for listening to
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you for listening, everyone. We'll be back next week. A new episode drops every Wednesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jenny.
Bye.